Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Healing Connections podcast. This is Emmy Vadnais, and today we are talking about acupressure for stress and tension with Deanna Waggy, who is an occupational therapist who practices zero balancing and soul lightening acupressure. She provides virtual and in-person holistic wellness services, acupressure classes, spiritual direction, and consultation. She is in South Bend, Indiana. Welcome, Deanna. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm glad I could be here.
So nice to talk with you, Deanna. You just have a wealth of a background with occupational therapy, spirituality, acupressure, and I'm so glad we get to talk with you because so many people are dealing with stress and tension. And this is just something that seems to come along with life, but in particular, there's so many challenges going on with COVID and people going back to school. And I just wanted to give people some tools and share the great resources you have. And so I'm wondering if you could just start us out a little bit and let us know what led you to even get into acupressure.
Well, I've always been very curious about a lot of the complementary and integrative health modalities. I've used them myself for my own health and wellness. A friend introduced me to zero balancing, and I discovered that the founder of zero balancing was married to the founder of soul lightening acupressure. So I started studying both modalities and fell in love with this 5-element acupuncture model of looking at the whole person, the body, mind, emotions, and soul. And so this 5-element model is based on looking at nature and how we see things in nature, and it can teach us about our own bodies. And I just became fascinated with that. And the other thing that really drew me to this work is that I was, as an OT, an occupational therapist, I was treating patients and they had to come to me for treatment and for my expertise. But in between sessions, I really felt like they needed something to boost their own health and wellness. And so I was searching for something that I could teach them that they could do on their own, something very simple and easy to use. And acupressure was the thing that really seemed to resonate the most with me. I could easily teach people points to hold on themselves and they felt better. And so that's kind of how I landed here. And now I'm teaching that because I just love this work and want more people to be able to use acupressure.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's a great approach because it's something that a practitioner can do to you. And you can also apply it and do self-acupressure. So before we get in a little bit further, could you just describe what acupressure is for those who may be new to it?
Sure. I think most people have probably heard of acupuncture. That's becoming more popular since the 70s, once we were introduced to some of the Eastern medicine techniques. Acupressure is another form of healing that is used in Eastern medicine along with herbal remedies and other things. But acupressure typically is using light touch on a point or a location somewhere in the body that helps to restore a sense of health and wellness. And it's based on models of flows of energy. Like we have a circulatory system that flows the blood flow, and we have a nervous system that has nerves. Well, in an Eastern perspective, we have energy flows within our body. And so these points or acupressure points on a person's flows of energy in the body helps to restore balance. It's a really broad field when you start to look at what the term acupressure is, because it has to do with moving, working with the energy in the body. And so you can use different types of touch, different amount of pressure. You can use your finger or your elbow or tools. Some people use colored lights or tuning forks or essential oils. It's such a broad field. You can tap the point, you can hold the point, you can slide on the point. And so there's different forms of acupressure that have evolved over the years. The kind of acupressure I do has its origins in Jin Shin Jitsu, which is a Japanese form of acupressure, holding different points on the body and allowing the body's tension and stress to relax and allowing the flows to move in the body. And one thing that I'll mention about the theory of acupressure and acupuncture for that matter is that when energy flows freely in our body, disease cannot exist. And now that's a pretty bold statement to make. And so I prefer to say where energy is moving freely, we move towards greater health and wellness. And so I want to help release the tension, the held, stuck energy in the body, and allow us to have this opportunity for our body to use its own innate wisdom to heal and to be healthier.
Yes, and it seems that with acupressure, it is simultaneously assisting to get the energy to flow well and be more balanced. When we think of that yin and that yang, that's really what these modalities are based on, is that flow of that rhythm, that we're addressing the energy simultaneously with the physical body as well.
Yes, yes. The combination of that touching the energy and the structure is so important in bringing the whole person into balance. Yeah.
Right. And so if somebody is dealing with a headache or back discomfort or just maybe some type of ache at a joint or so forth, that it's possible that there could be some energy blockage there.
Definitely. Yes. As we look at the body from a Western perspective, we hear about trigger points in the muscles, or where the nerve enters the muscle, or where it comes off of the spine. And a lot of those same areas are where energy flows too. And so we can look at those maps of the body and get clues as to where we can hold those points. But we already know a lot of those points. When things ache in our body, we hold those points, and those sore spots are the areas that are acupressure points. And when we hold them, they feel better. We feel good.
Right. We naturally put our hand to the areas that are affecting us, right? Like if we bump our elbow, we put our hand there for like, oh, I need to think about that. And
right. Yeah. All those points we automatically go to.
So how can acupressure help us with stress and tension?
Well, I think one of the things that happens when we start to use acupressure is we slow down and pause, which is really important. And when we hold those points on our body and take a deep breath, our body starts to drop from that constant go, 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 the fight or flight responses, or the continual pressures that we feel to keep up with things. And we step back and get a different perspective. We change from the doing to the being, which is really important. And then as we hold these points, they help us reset from the sympathetic fight or flight response to our parasympathetic rest and digest response in the body. It releases all these neurotransmitters and endorphins and hormones, and we hear these names, serotonin and dopamine and oxytocin. All those things help us feel good. And when we feel better, when we feel pleasure and happiness, when we feel love, those things just help with healing. It's a higher vibration within our body. The things that cause disease or discomfort are lower vibrations, so to speak. We feel heaviness when we're sad or tired, or when we feel grief. And so by holding these points, it helps to really raise us up into a higher form of who we are, and to feel good about ourselves and how we interact with the world.
Mm-hmm. And can you share a story about how you help somebody with acupressure for stress or tension?
Sure, I have lots of stories. The one that I will share here is that I have been seeing a client who came to me. I use a lot of my occupational therapy skills, but she also was feeling a lot of stress and tension, had migraines, had a car accident, and so there had been some whiplash and some tension in the side of her head, and she was feeling a lot of pressure, and made it hard to concentrate and to go through her normal day. And I noticed she carried a lot of tension in her shoulders. Her shoulders were high when she came in, her jaw was tense. And so we talked about stress management, and a part of the tool that we used was acupressure. So learning to hold the area where she had tension and allowing it to soften, teaching her breath work to use with the acupressure points. And then I used some protocols on her to help release some of the areas of tension that I knew were related to digestion, and some of the rapid heart rate that she was having. And a lot of those symptoms that the traditional Western medicine were having trouble figuring out suddenly seemed to disappear. But from these Eastern medicine 5-element models, it made perfect sense, because she had had some blockages in some of these flows of energy. And when we released the tension and the stress, a lot of those other symptoms came back into balance in her body. And she learned then to use those points for herself when she was on vacation, or when certain stressful situations came up in her life, so that she didn't need to rely on other people to help her feel better. She knew what to do. And it was important for me to be able to teach her the reasons why she was holding each of the points, so she knew when to use them for different situations. So
That is fabulous that she was able to get so much improvement and to feel better. And that's what we're all looking for. So I understand that there's a lot people can learn, but is there something, maybe a few, 1 or 2 tips or suggestions you can share with people today, and something that they can do for themselves to help them to relieve that stress and tension?
Sure. One of my favorite points I like to teach people is here under the collarbone. So if you find the breastbone in the center of your body, and you know where your shoulder joint is, there's a bone that connects across the top, your clavicle. And if you come to the middle of it, about in the middle on the underneath side, and it's about a nipple line, there's a acupressure point there that helps to release some of the fight or flight response and reset our body to that rest and digest. So the way I do it is I use 2 hands. You can cross them over if that's more comfortable. Sometimes at night I'll do that when I'm lying in bed. Or I will also use my thumb and my middle finger and just put a hand on each side. And then I can lay my hand against my chest, and then that helps to, add a second hand there. And you feel the softening in the area. So I'm using just a little bit of pressure to take out the looseness in the muscle tissue, so I feel a little bit of tension underneath the surface of the skin. But my hand is very soft and relaxed. It's very light pressure. If I had a stick of butter and I was putting my fingers on it, I wouldn't be smushing down into it, but I'd be very gentle on the top surface. So I just barely leave a fingerprint there. So that's the kind of pressure, enough to push a coin gently across the surface of a table. And so holding that point, taking a breath, and just pausing and allowing that, you start to feel your body relax, and you feel a little calmer, happier. So there's a lot of different, depending on what sensations you've had going on in your body. But I spend a lot of time teaching people to be aware and notice what's happening within their body when they hold these points. Maybe a tummy gurgle because their digestive tract is opening up. Maybe they feel, oh, I can take a deeper breath now. I don't feel that heaviness on my shoulder with all the weight of the world I'm carrying. Maybe they feel the warmth, or sometimes they feel like a little trickle under their finger, and it's that energy flow that's starting to move. So that's one of the best things for stress. And at night, if you're stressed out and having trouble sleeping, I like the point, this heart 7 point here. If you trace your little finger down to your wrist, and there's a little area between the tendons at the wrist line, I'll just teach people, just rub your wrist, rub those points and activate it, or hold your whole wrist. But this point here is very good for that heart rate. It helps it slow down, and it helps reduce anxiety, and just helps you to sleep a little bit better when you can hold those points at night. So you might hold one wrist and then the other, or sometimes you can figure out how to hold the points, both points simultaneously.
Like giving yourself a handshake.
Exactly.
I really like this. These are all wonderful, and thank you for sharing these with us. I was noticing that it feels good to hold both hands here, but also when you had us do one hand, I felt like I was holding my heart and I was connecting with
Yes.
my heart.
Mhm.
Does that happen for people often? Is that
Yes,
something?
it does. I actually call that the high heart. In our soul lightning work, we call that the high heart, and that has to do with our compassion and service. But it's a very calming point, and we're holding some points on the kidney meridian that is right close to the breastbone that have to do with connecting with our ancestors and spiritual. There's a spirituality piece of this, and so it's connecting you into the source of life, the source of our where we come from. And so there's this very spiritual component, and the heart is where our soul resides, the heart, the seat of the soul there. So we're holding that, our heart, in our hands when we're here.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And in a way, we're right here by our throat chakra. So we're opening up that flow between the head and the heart. The chakras are these vortexes of energy along the spine that different traditions often look at. But when we think about the throat, that has to do with speaking our truth, but it's also opening up this connection between our head and our heart. And many of us are in our head a lot and making decisions, and we forget to drop into our heart and make decisions from that heart space. And that's really tapping into intuition, which I mean, you know a lot about with your book that you've written. But I think there's a huge component of intuition that happens with the acupressure. When we are touching these points, we're connecting in with the source of our life and our soul, and kind of resetting and bringing us back home to ourselves. So
Right.
that's
And that
partly
can
why I
help,
love the acupressure.
yeah, definitely. And that can help us step back from the stress that can keep us caught up in worry, confusion, fear, making rash decisions, being maybe hurt, being caught up in our egos of attachments. And maybe we can then not make the best decisions, but by settling in with our body, harmonizing and balancing our energy better, we can see things more clearly, we can feel better, and then we can go through our days just being able to really at the end of the day, really being more during the day, and at the end of the day being more loving to ourselves and others, which I think most people would agree would make the world a much better place. So
Right.
everybody does have a lot of demands. We have to go to work, we have to pay our bills, where people are raising children, people are taking care of elderly parents, people have sadly are dealing with chronic conditions, physical and mental health conditions, and mental health issues are on the rise. So one that you shared when we did the OT Wellbeing Summit that I really thought was really nice too, is how you had us work with our back and our shoulders. So because a lot of people, when we get stressed, I think it's just part of our survival, right? Our shoulders get elevated so that our blood pressure can come up and we can get in that fight, flight, or freeze, because we do need to take action on something, and our heart rate comes up and so forth. So would you be willing to share that as well, Deanna?
Sure. I like this point on the top of our shoulder. So we use the point under our collarbone. So if you go up to the top of your shoulder, I cross my hand over. It's halfway between your neck and your shoulder, that when the muscle kind of drops off, there's a little indent there. And it's right on the top edge of the shoulder. And this point in our soul lightning work, we refer to it as excess baggage. And the Chinese call
none
it
of us have
shoulder
that.
But yeah, it really has to do with all the things that we're shouldering in life and carrying. And so this the point is called shoulder well in Chinese medicine. And so it has to do with this deep well. We're accessing more of who we really are. But this point, when we hold it, it really helps to soften. We carry so much tension here. And I actually think the vagus nerve gets entrapped a lot in our neck and the sternocleidomastoid muscle under our clavicle, all of these muscles and bones. And when we elevate our shoulders because we're stressed out, it helps it, well, I shouldn't say help, it entraps that nerve so it doesn't work as well. And that nerve has to do with all of our automatic functions and our breathing, our digestion, our sex drive, all the things that we don't think about but happen automatically. And so this point is going to help us to release that tension. You can feel the shoulders starting to soften when you hold the point. You start to breathe a little deeper. It's just that let down that happens, and it allows the body to start flowing and helping to heal a lot of the tension that we carry. So all those feel good hormones, I think these points help. And it helps sometimes to just massage a little bit of the tension in the actual muscles. We're not really working with the muscles in acupressure, we're working with energy flow. But I think part of why we do complementary medicine is that it helps when we can do multiple things and modalities to help release all of the tension we carry. So acupressure is a nice complement to massage and to even topical things like the essential oils that help us to feel better and just release those happy hormones in our body.
Definitely. When you were having us cross our arms and place our hands gently over our shoulders, I feel that the pressure, which is nice, which is also probably why things like weighted blankets are used sometimes for people that proprioceptive input. So there's a lot happening with this acupressure. And also I'm noticing that I'm giving myself a hug.
Yes. It's that self-love. Self-love is self-care, right? Self-care is self-love.
Yeah. And so there again, that connection with do you find that when people are doing self acupressure that they're bringing love to themselves, right? They're bringing that attention and care.
Yes, definitely. And yet most of us are so busy giving, well, I shouldn't say most of us, a lot of women especially tend to overgive to other people in their life and save the last for themselves. And it's kind of like putting on our oxygen mask first before we take care of everybody else. When we start to do self-care, when we start to use these acupressure points and love ourselves first, then we're coming from this place of fullness, this full cup of love that we can share with other people instead of coming from a depleted place where we're over tired, burned out, stressed out, compassion fatigue, all of those things that are showing up right now in the world. So
yeah, and while it's nice to be able to have these, and thank you so much for sharing these, you've shared just 3 very simple techniques that can be very powerful, is that if you're listening and you're like, oh, I've been given so much that I don't even want to just give to myself, like somebody needs to give to me, then go and get an acupressure session. And so Deanna, where would you suggest somebody find out about, how can they find a good resource for somebody who provides acupressure if they would like to have somebody provide this to them?
Well, my first go-to is zero balancing or soul lightening acupressure, since that's what I'm trained in. So both of those organizations have Find a Practitioner on their website. The International Alliance of Health Educators, IAHE.com, has listings of people who have had a lot of training in meridians, and a lot of craniosacral therapists go on and study meridians and learn to use. It's basically acupressure that they're using. There are many other modalities that use acupressure. So Jin Shin Jitsu, Shiatsu, emotional freedom technique, even Reiki, all of these modalities are using forms of acupressure and holding these flows of energy. So you could be curious and explore what is acupressure? What are all these modalities? And then Google who's local that has training in these. A lot of massage schools teach different forms of acupressure. And so you could start with a massage therapist and look and see on their website what kind of training they have. And then I would also ask people, if they've been trained in acupressure, have they had some kind of formal training or a touch component to it, or a certification? There's all kinds of online classes popping up these days because of COVID, and I think online learning is a wonderful tool. But I also feel strongly that you can learn it by observing somebody holding points. But if you want to really learn it well, to be a practitioner, you really need to go and have some kind of touch feedback component. So that would be a question you could ask your practitioner: is what kind of training have you had? Have you learned touch from other people, from a massage school or a certification program? I guess that would be where I would start. And then there's all kinds of books that you can learn on your own. There's a lot of videos. I have some on my website, but there are other programs. The Soul Lightening Acupressure has a Good Points program where you can learn some simple little protocols and some points to hold on yourself for migraines or stress relief or deep relaxation. So you can go to the website and look for classes there too.
And with those points that you were sharing with us, how long would somebody hold those? Because people probably, I think you did a great job describing the pressure that they would use, but how long should they hold it and just be with that?
So I usually encourage my clients to hold it for at least several breath cycles until they feel something start to change. A lot of times it'll take 1 or 2 minutes. Sometimes we get impatient, we want to rush through to the next point, and we might feel something start to change, but the longer we hold it, the deeper the relaxation response happens. And so take your time, and if you hold the point longer, you're going to get a deeper response. If you're doing these points regularly throughout the day and every day, you're going to get a better response from your body, because there's a cumulative effect from using the points. So the bare minimum is touching the point and allowing it to, you feel it with your body. The other thing I will mention is I like to use stress balls. I have a little smiley face here, but something that's soft, that you can put 1 or 2 of these in a sock and then put them back against your spine and lean into those points. There's a lot of points along our spine that help to activate our organs, and there's emotional releases that can happen from that. And so to lean back against those points, you want it to be fairly soft. You could knot up a scarf and use to lean back. And so your brain gets the impression of, oh, there's pressure against that point, and your body pays attention to that point and then can start a relaxation response from that. And so that's another way that you can use that in bed when you're lying down or sitting in a chair or on the couch in the evening watching a movie. You can use these little soft balls to help activate some of those points.
Wow. Well, thank you for all these great resources. It is a very great technique and approach, because we do carry so much tension in our bodies, and I appreciate you giving us these great techniques. So you and I recognize that when people get into the relaxation response, and this has been researched, that often people start to connect with that peace, that joy, that love, and that can, for a lot of people, connect to their own connection, their own personal connection to spirituality, whatever that means for them is. And so I'm wondering if you could share, and I like to ask this question of my guests on the Healing Connections podcast: what does God or spirituality mean to you?
Hmm, great question. Um, Spirituality to me isn't necessarily a religion. It has to do with something bigger, connecting in with a conscious awareness of something bigger than ourselves, connecting in with the source of life. And that's what I call God. There's many names for God, and I believe that there is one primary source of life, God, the divine, whatever terminology you feel comfortable using, but that we have many traditions that come out of that. And it ultimately has to do with love, loving other people, doing good, helping other people, bringing peace and unity, holding people in high regard. And the more that we study these practices and that we connect in with our own sense of connection to the divine and our own intuition, our own soul wisdom, the more we want to connect with others in that way and help bring peace and unity in the world. I think, every age has needed be this, but right now I just really feel like the past 2 years with COVID is so much, this pandemic has brought a lot of tension and people moving into different camps with different beliefs. And the more that we can bring love and unity and help bring us together into what we have in common, the more we can move towards that ultimate unconditional love. So, and I think this work helps bring us to that point where we want to share this love that we have with others. So it
Beautifully
connects
said.
us to ourselves.
Exactly. And the more that we can have that self-love, truly, the greater capacity we have for loving others.
Yes. Mhm.
Deanna, is there anything else you would like to share today?
One of the things that I love talking about is this vagus nerve, this nerve that causes us to respond to the fight or flight, to stress, but also can help to bring us back into this zone of resiliency. And I really believe that spiritual practices, things that connect us to our own self, the self-love, and to the source of life, really help reset that stress response in our body. So spending time in nature, doing artwork and creativity, things that make us feel good and feel pleasure and happy, connecting with others, and also reading spiritual writers and learning and being curious and exploring, all sitting in silence, the contemplation and being and pausing. All of those things help us to respond better to stress in our life. So I really am a big proponent of learning these spiritual practices to help reset us and bring us back home to ourselves, and then help us be fully who we are in the world. So.
And also, you had mentioned before we started recording here today that you really want to get a message out to practitioners, healthcare practitioners who may be listening, to share stories and research on these kinds of approaches.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we share how these practices and things like acupressure can make a big difference. In the United States especially, we hear some about the acupuncture, and we've seen some studies and things, but acupressure is not as widely known. And so I like to share a lot of stories, but I think the more we can share these complementary integrative health practices and how they have helped us, and we can share it with our physicians and other health practitioners and other family and friends. The more we spread the word about this, the more we find out how this is working. These are evidence-based practices. There's research that have been done on acupressure and a lot of these other complementary integrative health modalities, but it's important for us to keep sharing how they work. I think that it helps us to be healthier when we can combine these with other Western allopathic medicine. And they work hand in hand. They're not separate from each other. And so when we can look at the whole person from the big picture of both the energy and the structure, the Western perspective, the Eastern perspective. We help bring us into unity because we do have this energy body and we have a structural body. And the more we can work at using the best of all of these health practices, the better we can be, the more healthier we can be. But we need to share our stories with each other. So,
well, I'm so glad I could help share yours and those you've helped and supported. And Deanna, how can people get in touch with you?
they can come to my website. It's dwaggy, DWAGGY.com. That's the easiest way. I wrote a little card here. I think it's the correct way. So Soul Lightening or zerobalancing.com will also get you to my website, but the OT for Peace at gmail.com is my email. So people can send me an email too if they're interested. So OT for Occupational Therapist, the number 4, and then Peace. So I would love to be in touch with people and collaborate with people. I have some videos on my website through my YouTube channel, and there will be more coming here in the next few months. I have a course that I plan to be launching probably February, mid-February of 2022, looking at quick practices, things you can use in under 2 minutes to help release stress in your life. And the more we learn to use these on ourselves, we can share them with other people and help reboot the stress response that a lot of us are living with stress and burnout in our lives. So,
well, thank you so much for being with us, Deanna, and all of this beautiful technique you've shared with us and this great wisdom. I'm sure it will help many people.
Thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing in the world, Emmy. I really appreciate the ways that you've promoted not only the holistic practices, but the spirituality and the intuition. We speak the same language here. So I really appreciated talking with you today.
Me too. And thank you for recognizing that. And it's making a difference. There's a lot more people who are learning about these approaches, and I suspect it will continue to grow. So thank you for your efforts as well, Deanna. And thank you all for listening today. And until next time, be well.